doesn't have a registered.
We're going to talk about that once these people are sorted into teams. So I'm kind of waiting on that. I'm holding on that, okay? So we will take care of that. All right, so we're going to talk about the Gilded Age today. I'm wondering if we're going to talk about the Gilded Age today. Everybody has a little bit different definition of when it starts and when it ends. I started right after the Civil War, and I actually am going to start a little bit earlier today so that you can understand what the Gilded Age is. I'm just going to hopefully get through this introductory part, and hopefully miraculously by then these guys will all be sorted into teams and will be ready to go in terms of explaining the civic innovation competition. Okay, so kind of the big question is, how did America change? How was it shaped by the Civil War? So what happens after the Civil War? First, we need to come up with a definition, right? So the Gilded Age, what does that mean? Gilded here is not like your guilds, right, which has a U in it. This is the other gilded. This refers to when you go and cover something with like a thin coat of gold, right? And so Mark Twain wrote a book where he talked about this idea of it being a Gilded Age, because a lot of people talked about America after the Civil War as being in a golden age, and he said, no, it's a Gilded Age, right? So meaning that it was a lot more like an apple that somebody had gone and painted with gold, but that was rotten inside, right? Basically saying, yeah, there's a lot of wealth, there's a lot of prosperity, there's a lot of economic activity, there are a lot of things going on, but if we dig deeper, there are a lot of problems, right? There are a lot of social problems going on in this time period. There's a lot of inequality, a lot of different issues going on. So Mark Twain, famous for coining that phrase, the Gilded Age, which we use to refer to this time period. Now, I want to tell a little bit of a story. It's an important story, and it's a story about kind of, it's going to connect to the civic innovation competition thing, the C-School thing that we're going to talk about in a minute. It's a story of entrepreneurship and sort of the persistence that it is required for innovation. And in order to introduce this particular concept, we're going to just take a little bit of a lesson from a particular film. So for those of you not acquainted with Tommy Boy, this is the story of Tommy, played by Chris Farley, and what's his name? Richard is the character. David Spade. I keep wanting to say Dennis. David Spade playing Richard. And, a little summary is right there. But anyway, at this point, they're trying to save their company, which makes brake pads, right? And so they're getting ready to really start selling and get out there and hopefully save the company. So Richard has just given Tom a pep speech, and here we go. All right, just hang on to your socks. So this is going to be a good example of sort of what the entrepreneurial spirit involves.
No.
Make sure.
We don't take no prisoners.
We don't take no for an answer.
Oh, yeah. We don't take no for an answer. We don't take no for an answer. We don't take no for an answer. No. Okie dokie.
No.
Gotcha, thanks. Terrific. Thanks for your time.
Let me say, maybe.
Well then, I'd just like to add that the spectrometer readout on the nickel-cadmium alloy mix indicates a Goodrich strobe and fade, decreasing incidence of wear to the pressure plate. If you could just...
Whoa, little fella, you're not speaking my language.
What my associate is trying to say is that our new brake pads are really cool. You're not even going to believe it. Like, let's say you're driving along the road with your family, and you're driving along, la-li-la, woo, and then all of a sudden there's a truck tire in the middle of the road, and you hit the brakes. Whoa, that was close. Now let's see what happens when you're driving with the other guy's brake pads. You're driving along, and all of a sudden the kids are yelling from the back seat, I gotta go to the bathroom, Daddy. Not now, damn it. Truck tire. I can't stop. Help! There's a cliff. And your family's screaming, oh my God, we're burning alive. No, I can't feel my legs. In comes a meat wagon. And the medic gets out and says, oh my God. New guy's in the corner puking his guts out. All because you want to save a couple extra pennies. And to me, it doesn't.
Get out. Now.
Sir.
Do you validate?
Now.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so they failed miserably, right, in this first attempt, and this is key to a lot of what happens with innovation and entrepreneurship, is that failure is key. And of course, as the movie proceeds, if you haven't seen it, it is available on Netflix now. You should watch this comedy. But eventually, of course, they do win in the end and succeed through persistence. But I want to tell a similar story, and it involves something that I think at first blush would seem kind of boring, which is telegraphs, right? When you think about excitement, you think telegraphs, right? No. So, telegraph system was an amazing invention that allowed for long-distance communication, rapid long-distance communication. There are actually a few people who invented it. It basically involved, very similar to like power lines or phone lines, you had these lines along which a little electric current could go, and it was Samuel Morse, along with some other people, but he was really good at taking all the credit for himself, who developed a type of telegraph that was a single line instead of several lines sort of twisted together. And he also invented something with his name in it. Morse code, all right? So the actual code that you would use to signal and send messages along a telegraph line, right? So this all happens in the 1830s. And very rapidly across the eastern United States, we developed telegraph lines, and you know, which is great, allows for this rapid communication. But then something happens. Some guy gets an idea, and this is how most entrepreneurial stories begin, is with some guy's idea. So this guy, Frederick Gibson, incredible beard, he comes up with an idea. He's a telegraph operator, and he works up in Canada, and he's the first guy to go and lay some telegraph line across a little bay in order to get telegraph to the western shore of Newfoundland, which is, you know, way up there. And, you know, so Frederick one day, he's looking at a map, and he looks at this map and he says, hey, Newfoundland is right here. It's really not that far to Ireland, right? I mean, you know, it's just right there, practically, right? I mean, we're just talking like 2,500 miles. So he decides, what if we laid a telegraph line all the way across the ocean so that we could communicate with the other side of the Atlantic? crazy idea, right? Insane idea. And so he forms a company, begins to pursue it. Turns out that much like Tommy and Richard, he runs into some early failures, and before he's even finished moving, getting the telegraph line from the western side to the eastern side of Newfoundland, he's bankrupt. And back then, they throw you in prison, right? So he winds up in prison for a year with his debts, and then, which, you know, it could have ended there, right? Theoretically, the story could have ended there. Except that he gets out of jail, and he meets this guy, Cyrus Field, who is an investor, New Yorker, who the two of them have this conversation, and Gisborne tells Field his idea for this transatlantic telegraph line, and Field loves the idea, right? He goes, that's a fantastic idea. So he goes and he gets a bunch of investors to invest in a company. They start a new company, and together they pool their money. They go and they hire this oceanographer who had actually already been trying to study the Atlantic to try and get an idea of, is this possible? What does the floor of the ocean look like, right? Is there a way to keep, I mean, this is a cable that electric currents have to be sent through, and we're going to put it under 2,500 miles of water, right? So it seems like something could go wrong there, theoretically, right? So how do we keep that from going badly? And anyway, has to come up with a whole bunch of different things. They figure out a plan for how to make it. They take 7 different cords, conductive wires. They wrap them together, wind them together. They then wrap them in hemp, in basically a rope type material. And then they surround that with a metal sheath to protect it, and then they surround that with this stuff called gutta percha, which is like a gummy resin that comes from trees in Malaysia that they're pretty sure will keep out the water, and also they think that fish won't like it, and so they won't chew on it or anything. And so they go through this long process to figure this out. They actually do it in 2 different factories. They create the cable in 2 different factories, and it turns out that one of the factories spins the wires, places the wires in one direction, and the other does it in the other direction. So then they have to go and redo half of them, right? So that's kind of a setback. Then they have to figure out how to actually get it into a ship. They have to create these great big drums, and you can see these guys are laying them by hand, laying the cable by hand, and they have to go and perfectly lay it out, because if they are off by a little bit, then it's going to tangle and snap, right? So this poor guy right here, right, I'm sure he went crazy by the end of laying 2,500 miles of cable in this way. But he's got to go and carefully, you know, put it in these circles that spread out. And then they have to get all this gearing, invent all this rigging and so forth that will pull the cable up and drop it into the ocean in the correct manner, at the right speed, all that sort of thing. Now, this cable weighs, we've got 2,500 miles to go. This cable weighs a little more than 2,000 pounds per mile. Right? So you add that up, that's quite a bit, weighs quite a bit. And so they discovered that they cannot carry it all with one ship. There is no ship large enough at this time to be able to carry it all, so they have to use 2 ships. And so Cyrus Field, he's really excited. He goes and hires these 2 big ships, the Bryant and the Adger. And then he goes and commissions another ship that he fills with journalists because he's so sure that they're going to be successful. And they all get out there, and the winds pick up, and these 2 ships just about get destroyed and ripped apart in their effort and the experiment fails horribly on its first try, right? And so he kind of has to go back to the drawing board, go, what do we do? Do some more tests, wait another year, do some lobbying, get some money. So he gets some money from Congress and he gets some money from Parliament, right? Because America and England, they're both going to benefit from this line. And he gets them both to give him a ship and a much larger, a set of much larger and sturdier ships. This is the Niagara over here on the left. That's the American ship, and the Agamemnon, which is the British ship. Again, this is back in the day, so these are wooden frigate ships that are carrying these millions of pounds of cable and distributing it. So they go, the previous set, these guys had set out from New York together. This group decides to set out from England. They get out so far, and then the cable snaps, right? And they find the end of it, and they reattach it, and then they keep going. They keep going, and then they get, I think about 800 miles out, and the cable snaps, and they lose the end of it, and so they go, crap, we have to start all over, right? And so, and they can't just start over because they have to go and recoil all the cable and so forth, so it puts it off for another year, okay? Then the next year they go, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to meet in the middle of the Atlantic, right? So Niagara is going to come from New York. Agamemnon's going to come from England. We'll meet in the middle. We'll splice the cables together, and then we'll head back in either direction. And so they come up with this plan, great idea, they start heading off, and a storm kicks up, and it blows the Agamemnon 200 miles off course, and it takes them about a week to assess what damage, if any, was done to the cable, and they find out that it's considerable, and so they have to start over again. So they have another year, right, that they have to try. The next year, they do it again, and this time, finally, they connect. And a telegraph is able to be sent from the Queen to President Buchanan at the time, and then back again. Now, one of the problems was that the message from the Queen took about 17 hours to deliver, which was not a good sign, because they knew it should have taken minutes, not hours. And then the message back took as long. And they noticed that over time, the messages were taking longer and longer to transmit. So what was happening was that the guy operating the telegraph station on the American-Canadian side and the guy operating the message on the English side in Ireland could not agree about the right amount of voltage to send through this cable. And the guy on the American-Canadian side would send through just a ton of voltage because he was convinced that it required a lot of voltage in order to actually get the message all the way across to England, which meant that about 2 months after it had been connected, he burnt it out and it was ruined, okay? So then we fight a civil war, and so all this stuff goes on pause, right? So we just kind of take all this stuff that we've been working on for decades at this point and put it on pause. Meanwhile, in 1861, the telegraph across the West is completed. So the transcontinental telegraph makes its way to California. Now New York and California can communicate in a matter of minutes. And this makes it all the more tempting to finish that transatlantic cable, because then San Francisco and London or Paris could communicate in a matter of minutes. And this may sound kind of, I mean, a matter of minutes doesn't make that much sense to most of us, right? Like, can you imagine if it would take 2 minutes for a text message to slowly, like, upload on your phone? You'd go insane, right? Because that's just the way we are now. But we're talking about something that has never happened before, because for hundreds of years, in order to get a message from one side of the Atlantic and then get a message back required months, right? So we're moving from months to minutes. And this is a huge leap forward, right? So this telegraph that is created builds all the greater incentive for them to finish the transcontinental cable. And so the English go and they build a ship big enough to carry all the cable by itself, the Great Eastern. You can see it's got a what do you got? Wheel here that's a steam-powered wheel. But again, this is a wooden ship with masts and everything, and this thing is going to carry the cable all the way across. So it goes, they have a much better system for wrapping it around that's a lot quicker, and they've developed some very sophisticated machinery to make sure that the cable is laid out smoothly and consistently. It weighs more. This cable is much more advanced that they're laying, so it weighs 3,500 pounds per mile that they lay. And they start laying cable, and about 300 miles out, it snaps. And but they find the end, and then they pull it about 1,000 miles out, and it snaps again. Hand way in the back.
Where's the Great Eastern going from? Is it San Francisco, England?
It's going from England to New York, to Newfoundland. Not New York. And then it goes 1,000 miles out, snaps, loses the end, has to start over again the next year. The next year, though, we actually laid the cable, all right? So it takes all of that time to go and create a successful cable, and this one can transmit messages in a matter of minutes, so that you can go and you can communicate ideas from one side of the ocean to the other at what is just a ridiculous speed compared to everything that has come before it. You had your hand up.
Do we know why the first cable took so many hours to transmit?
It was partly in the design, and partly because the two telegraph operators were using different voltages, right, and expecting different levels of voltage. And they realized that they had this problem, that they both disagreed about how much electricity to shoot through the cable, but neither one of them was willing to budge, and so they just kept doing it, and it was stupid, right? So like the decades of effort. But it takes 19 years from the time that the original idea is conceived to developing a successful cable. It takes 19 years to make this thing happen. And it's actually a very critical piece of our story about the Gilded Age, because now what this means is that information can travel across the ocean much faster than a ship can. A ship carrying supplies and stock and so forth. And this allows us to actually begin to trade not just products, but the idea of products. Okay, this is where the stock market comes from. We can go, all right, this amount of stock is going to be coming, we know thanks to the telegraph, and as a result, we can already be trading it as if we had it. Now when a ship sinks, this turns into a problem, but we can plan and we can sell goods, and we can trade back and forth across the ocean at super high speed. And so the financial market, it kind of evolves out of this, and Wall Street becomes a thing. New York was already the largest, the best port along the East Coast, and so that's where things were coming. But then Wall Street becomes this place where the financial trading of stocks takes place also. So all of this new economy that happens after the Civil War is located in New York. New York becomes the heart of the United States after the Civil War, thanks to all these things that we're talking about. Okay, now I want to take a break for a minute, because it looks like we're sorted and stuff, right, Matt? Nervous, double thumbs up. Okay, I'll take it. Let's see if we can do this. So here's what I want you to do with your groups. Let's turn up the lights for a minute. No, that's not what I need. So what I'd like you to do is basically decide what you're going to do as a group with regard to this assignment. I'll put it this way. It's basically really difficult to get the guild points that you want without doing this innovation assignment in one form or another. So that's why I wanted to have you in your teams today, is so that you can just go ahead and start registering. So let me show you, as long as this doesn't log me in as my wife, we'll be set. Canvas. All right, this is us right here, and the announcement. Okay, so hopefully some of you saw this. If not, that's fine. Wrong buttons. But if somebody in your team at least has this up, so here are the details, here are all the time details on the innovation competition, right? So there's the online thing, which will take you, as an individual, it'll take you like an hour, maybe 2 tops to complete. And that's sort of the training, which is basically me talking at you, but on the computer instead of in person. And going through the training process. Then there's going to be like in-person workshops where you, in addition to that you need to do, so that you can kind of see, okay, I learned about it, but what does this look like in practice? How do I actually do this innovation stuff in practice? And there are a couple of dates there with different times. Wednesday, March 29th, during the day and in the evening. Tuesday, April 4th, during the day and in the evening. I think were we gonna add a third one? Does anybody, Lance? Was there gonna be a third date? Okay. That's a serious no. Okay. And then the C-School competition itself will be on April 15th from 9 to 12:30, right? So that's basically what you're committing to at that one. 125 points, guild points, if your team does that, plus obviously the chance to win the prize, theoretically, of $4,000, which is available. So that's option number 1. Option number 2 is to register your team for the research pool. And without going into a lot of detail, in order to, on the day of the competition, in order to do the competition, you're going to need a pool of people that you can actually talk to and get information from, so that you can then sort of develop your idea and your prototype and so forth. And so we need people to fall into that group. And we don't need a lot of people. I'm thinking like, 30, 40 people tops in that area. But if you have a group that's entirely composed of introverts, or thinks that innovation is a sin or whatever, right? Like, I don't care. Then go ahead and sign up for that. Now, somebody asked me, how does your team get signed up in the C-School competition page? The answer is that you'll just sign up as individuals, but we have your team information, so we can then apply that within the C-School online thing. So you don't have to worry about that. We just need you to make sure that you get each of your teammates registered. So I'm going to give you a few minutes now to talk amongst yourselves, kind of decide whether you want to go for the 125 points and do the C-School, or if you want to go for the 58 points and be part of the research pool. Have that discussion, and ideally just go ahead and register one way or the other. And we'll take about, I don't know, 5-7 minutes to take care of this. Go ahead.
So there's a guy that asked me, he said his group, 2 of the people besides him in his group both work and they don't want to do it, but he does.
Okay.
What do I tell him?
Let's couple of things real quickly that Matt's telling me now. If what was that last thing? If they signed up today, then come up here and you're gonna something. And then the other thing is if some member of your group really wants to do the competition but the rest doesn't, I would say also come up here. And we'll try and create some separate teams if you want to kind of split up on this issue. Ideally, you keep together, but if there's one person who really wants to go in a different direction, the rest of the team wants to go in another, we can figure that out.
Are we able to register and like decide on Thursday? One of our group members will be here. Does that work?
I would decide without him. But then, yeah. So I would decide without him, and then if he can't do it for some reason, then we may have to just, you know, yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
That goes right here.
Is it only one or the other?
It's one or the other, because the people doing C-School are going to rely on the research pool people. And so if you're both, you'll be interviewing yourself and it'll get weird real fast. Yeah.
So are either of these mandatory? I think we were just kind of confused.
They're not mandatory, but it will be much harder to get your guild points if you don't do it. Because these are like the biggest guild point assignments. So they're not mandatory, but I just like this is the easiest large points that you can get.
So is the guild points, is that mandatory though? Like do we have to have a certain amount, or is that just on the side if you want to become?
No, you have to reach a certain amount to like get an A. You have to get, I think, 200, 250.
So you do have to reach it.
Yeah. So you have
then there's a competition of reaching the highest in the class.
Yes. Yeah. So there are other factors. There are other assignments, right? So there are other ways to